Good afternoon. My name is Ali Mohammadi. I'm lead medical officer for CEDAR's Safe Use Initiative. Thank you for having me. As part of its mission, CEDAR's Safe Use Initiative seeks to form partnerships and collaborations with experts that share an interest in reversing truly preventable harm from drugs. In fiscal year 2014, our group, for the first time, began using the BAA funding mechanism to solicit and fund research proposals. Many of those proposals looking to study ways to better understand factors that lead to use, abuse, and misuse of opioid analgesics. We were thrilled to receive a proposal from today's speaker, Dr. Joseph Pergolizzi. He is COO of NEMA Research. His resume and his list of accomplishments are far too great to list in the short amount of time that we have, but suffice it to say, he's one of the nation's foremost minds on this topic, and I'm sure you'll find a very engaging speaker. So to present his project, the Nurse Pain Educator Pilot Program, Dr. Pergolizzi.
I know we have to keep on time, so I want to thank everyone for joining this afternoon and thank the agency for providing us this grant. I think it's going to be something that will serve as a model for other types of patient surveillance tools as well. So today's presentation, I'm going to briefly go over the project overview. We'll look at project-specific details related to nurse education, and then project-specific details related to the actual clinical study that we'll be performing. If you go into the room next door and look at the posters, or you read any newspaper, go anywhere in the world, you'll hear that there's lots of concerns about overconsumption and overprescription, misuse, abuse, and diversion of drugs, particularly opioids. And we're very concerned about opioids because it has resulted in an inordinate amount of emergency room department visits, overdoses, and fatalities in the United States. One of those main drivers is assumed to be inappropriate, unsafe, or overprescribing practices related to opioids. So this project overview tries to leverage knowledge that we've gained in management of other types of diseases, particularly diabetes and congestive heart failure, where nurse educators have been very instrumental at improving outcomes and improving patient communication while providing a conduit of information exchange frontline with the patient. Here, the pain nurse educator is expected to have that same type of positive impact and greatly improve the current status in pain medicine. The primary concept for the nurse pain educator is to work across the different entities within pain centers initially, because that's where there's a concentrated amount of these types of patients, and then expand out to pharmacists, primary care doctors, etc. So this initial educational pilot program will focus on various aspects related to pain management best practices with an emphasis of appropriate, rational, and societal safe use of opioid analgesics. It's pretty simple. There's a program setup, there is a training evaluation of nurses, and then evaluate the patients. If you look at the primary objectives, the primary objective is to reduce inappropriate consumption of opioids in chronic pain patients. The secondary objectives are many, but right on top is to reduce inappropriate prescribing of opioids in patients, and then to define the duties and responsibilities of a pain nurse educator, etc. So let's look at the project tasks. There are 3: setup and design of the nurse educator pilot program and patient training and assessment materials, followed by implementation of that education program, and then opioid utilization and patient education monitoring. So if you look at task 1, it can be broken into 2 parts. You have a nurse educator program, which will have 3 main components: online web-based training modules, case management modules, on-site training for patients and conferences, and then the patient pain training programs will have individual training, which can be in the form of booklets, brochures, etc., patient seminars, and online patient assessment tool using what we call the super protocol, which is safe use of pain remedies. The online portal is in the process of being built. The project is a couple months underway, and we're happy to say that we're meeting our timelines and our budget as well. How are we going to do this? There's a lot of information out there, and a lot of it is very good information. And a lot of it is considered good information in the eyes of our patients. As I think John showed you from Harvard, social media has really taken over a lot of what patients are doing when it comes to expectations. So we've looked at these different types of educational platforms that are online, and we've tried to create a ranking and scale for each one of those programs that can help either patients or providers, and are already on the shelf, so we don't have to spend all the money. We just have to validate whether or not the information coming from them is good. And so that's what we're going to do, and we've identified some of the ones that are listed here. So we'll create this library or single access point where nurse pain educators can go and then eventually direct their patients to go to find valuable information that's been vetted by the committee, which is made up of a steering committee including individuals from the FDA Safe Use Initiative. These are some of the modules that we've already looked at. Defining the difference between chronic pain and acute pain is important, looking at both pharmacological and non-pharmacological managements of pain, including the opioids, and then really taking a deep dive into opioids and how they're being used currently. Examples of some of the communication opportunities we feel here are really that ability for patients to connect with the nurse that they may not have with their physician. You know, patient-physician interaction time is decreasing and volume in pain centers are increasing as well. So having a nurse that's able to spend X amount of time with a patient and educate them, we feel has an intrinsic value. Communication training for nurses then really needs to be focused on them being that available upfront source for the patient to ask lots of other questions that they may not have the time to with their physician. And then also to maybe direct patients in appropriate pathways in the internet to find that information. Case management modules will be done. We want to make sure that the nurses understand what needs to be disseminated, the information types to the patient. So we're going to help them do that. What we will do is we'll set up fictional type of case modules, and we'll use a teach-back method with the nurses and the pain physician themselves. And there's a lot of good information that's already out there. Here's an example right here where there's a whole entire video catalog that talks about starting and discussing and monitoring opioids. Here's another one that actually is dedicated to, on Medscape, it's been vetted, it's dedicated to safe prescribing and pain medications as well. The on-site type of training seminars, these here, again, will be directed initially within the 4 centers that are piloting this program in the U.S., where the nurses will learn from their mentor doctor and then will go out and have to show us that they have assimilated the knowledge and are able to appropriately disseminate it. Task 2 is implementation of the nurse educator program itself. You'll have training with nurse educators at these 4 sites in the United States. We had lots of sites that were very interested to do this study. And we picked 2 sites for primary care and 2 sites from traditional pain medicine centers. And what we will do is we'll train the nurse educators at these 4 sites on the modules, on the online case management, and in various types of seminars, and then training of the nurse educators on how to use patient materials to train patients. We are actually going to be looking at outcome measures. We'll look at the pre- and post-testing assessments for knowledge assimilation from the nurses themselves, and these are all the different areas we'll be looking at, both knowledge, attitude, and practice, belief, attitudes, and perceptions. Opioid utilization and patient education. This is the 2nd year of the program. This is where the program actually focuses on determining the impact that the nurse will have. So now we send the nurse out into the clinic and we divide the patients into 2 groups, opioid naive and opioid experienced, and then we further divide them into either having a nurse pain educator or not having a nurse pain educator. And we see the impact that the nurse pain educator has over a 6-month period of time. We have educational type of tools that will be provided to the patients as well. So patients will be given either the opportunity to read the tools on their own, or the other group will have a nurse educator going over these type of tools and seeing how well the patient understands them. These materials, like I said, for the most part have already been built, and we will make some unique ones, but we'll be able to provide some off-the-shelf opportunities. Here's an example of a video. Again, this video here is something that we may be able to use as an interactive forum with patients, test it on them, see how they're reacting to it, etc. And it really talks about different ways that we can educate patients. just for time's sake, I'm going to cut that short. Patient seminars is another part of this, and this here I think is a real unique one because there was a question about REMS. How do we know the intentional and unintentional consequences, particularly when it comes to patients? Well, we will actually be asking that for the patients who are in this program. We'll find out those who are introduced to a REMS program by themselves, just one interaction with the doctor, versus those which are guided through it with a pain nurse educator. This is the protocol that's already written and vetted. This is, again, the safe use for pain remedies. There are primary, secondary, and tertiary objectives. The primary endpoint is the difference between opioid consumption in patients with or without education by a nurse pain educator, as measured by the total number of opioids consumed during the study period on a monthly basis. Tertiary and secondary and tertiary endpoints are listed here. And again, it just tries to give us a good understanding of the impactfulness of the nurse pain educator. A total of 200 patients, 50 in the opioid naive education arm, 50 in the opioid naive non-education, and the same for the opioid experienced patient. And this is the schedule of events, and it's supposed to take about 6 months in the full time. So again, I think this is a very novel program. It'll allow us to really get good insight to see what our patients understand about their pain medications, particularly opioids, and how impactful programs like REMS and others are. Thank you.